Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure being here, though I'm not an MBA myself, but once again, thanks for calling me here. After completing your MBAs from Goa Institute of Management, you would realize that the world outside is a very different one compared to the one inside the campus. Your colleagues in the industries would be from diverse backgrounds, of different vintages, and varying temperaments. And therefore, for you to gain acceptance into this very heterogeneous environment, certain soft skills are important for you. Now, what are those soft skills? I was in Mumbai a fortnight ago, and I decided to go on a drive on the newly constructed Atal Setu Sea Link Bridge. Not to travel anywhere, but just to feel the experience of being on this engineering marvel and to be able to click a few pictures. It was a marvelous experience, no doubt. And what was evident was the skill, the innovation, the thought leadership, and the teamwork that must have gone into the overall making of the whole bridge. But then, is project management limited only to the construction industry? I think not. When we read about successful marketing campaigns, or a technology innovation by an IT company, or a successful IPO, or a pandemic vaccine by a pharma company, it makes us curious as to how the idea came about and how the multifunctional team came together to make the whole thing successful. But what about Bollywood? The names you see in the closing credit roll of a movie are those of those multifunctional team members that worked hard on the entire movie to make it happen. That is project management. While writing my first book, as you see out there, R.D. Burman, The Man, the Music, I happened to interview 24 Bollywood music personalities. And I learned how the various sections of an orchestra, of an ensemble, synchronize, resonate, and come together to create the final output that we love to be entertained with. The musical notes need to be arranged on these various sections that I spoke about. And then there is recording, sound balancing, rehearsal, sound mixing, and all that needs to happen, and also the post-production. For this to happen, it needs assistants, arrangers, engineers, recordists, musicians, singers to work cohesively and collaboratively, just the way it is in any other industry. I was so awestruck by the complexity of it all that we decided to have a credit roll of the musicians and assistants right at the beginning of the book and not at the end of a film that you normally see. Here's the long list. This is the first time that any Bollywood biography carried an entire list of the assistants and musicians. I also learned through many hours of interviews with these eminent musicians and assistants about the importance of soft skills like innovation, teamwork, and adaptability. How these things are also important when it comes to composing music. How? Let us start with innovation. We were talking about R.D. Burman, weren't we? The subject of my first book. R.D. Burman, or Pancham as he was known, was a legendary Bollywood composer who ruled from the 1960s to the 1980s. So what about him? Before Pancham's time, film music used to be largely categorized as either classical music based or Western music based. Also, it followed certain tradition, certain time-tested tradition. It followed a pattern of 16 bars on the violin and then followed by the flute, after which the antara would start on cue. And then came Teesri Manzil, Pancham's most successful album and the first album after 7 years of struggle. And that turned out to be a watershed. It was Pancham's breakthrough. Why? Why was it a breakthrough? For the music of Teesri Manzil, Pancham broke this tradition and brought the instruments with heavy sounds like trombone and the trumpet up front. His ensemble in Teesri Manzil included the instruments like violin, the cello, the vibraphone, the saxophone, the trumpet, the drums, the conga, the secondary percussions like castanet, and the triangle. Rarely heard of before. The whole setup was an instrumentalist dream. And that's why the film's album turned out to be a watershed one. Not just that, in the same year, young Pancham improvised the Brazilian bossa nova beat by simplifying the chords and dovetailing it with a pentatonic tune for that same year film, Pati Patni. It was the first instance of the bossa nova, Brazilian bossa nova beat being used in Hindi film music. You may have also heard of the blues music, the music of the oppressed man in America, that gained recognition in the civilized world, courtesy a few bands in New Orleans. Pancham espoused the blues scale and retrofitted it into his tunes to create music out here in Bollywood. During his musical career, his long and eminent musical career, Pancham blended various genres like your rock, jazz, Latino, Caribbean, twist, and of course, the Indian classical music. He mixed rhythm patterns. He improvised with the lead and the bass guitar to create piquant chords. And he introduced the double track recording and the flanger. He brought in a new sound and a new sensibility. His music sounded contraband and was considered counterculture during his time. But he had an entire generation swinging to his delectable music. He was the Pied Piper of Hindi film music. To this day, R.D. Burman's music is passionately discussed in online and offline forums. His music videos log millions of eyeballs, and his fan count outstrips that of all his contemporaries put together. A remixed version of his music appear even in music composed today, in the new films released today. With this innovation-infused melody, R.D. Burman, the maverick, changed the grammar of light music forever. Did this innovative mindset help in team building in Pancham's team as well? Would that apply to us? How would Pancham compose music? Would he do it all alone? No. Often, Pancham and his core team of musicians would huddle around in a room and discuss the situation and the sequence and the mood of the scene, and they would discuss what the appropriate tune was for that particular scene or the sequence. These sessions were known as sitting sessions and would be accompanied by food and drinks, of course, and would often run late into the nights. Their camaraderie was very conducive for this out-of-the-box thinking, and it would encourage all the team members to come out with ideas, big or small. So it was a collective effort. It was not a solo effort. No wonder that this sort of teamwork and camaraderie gave results like, you've heard the Banshee wail, right? The famous Banshee wail in Sholay during Gabbar Singh's entry scene. That was created by a mixture of the organ by Kersey Lord, the cello by Basu Chakravarti, and an indigenously developed instrument called hydrophone. Nobody had ever thought of this combination before. That is the sort of energy a leader with contrarian views infuses into the team to get collective thinking going. A leader like this is more likely to have team stickiness than a leader who just maintains status quo. It's true for every industry. Remember, Pancham had started his career as a musician playing the mouth organ. Yes, at a very junior level in the hierarchy. And later he became an assistant to his father, S.D. Burman, the legendary composer S.D. Burman. And there too, he made a big difference by infusing a different flavor into his father's compositions. So R.D. Burman did not inherit the position of the music director from his father. At every rung of his career ladder, Pancham's leadership was leadership through innovation. And Pancham wasn't an MBA. He wasn't even a graduate. He hadn't even passed his 12th exam. An important caveat here. Every company has a specific organization culture. And adapting to this org culture is extremely important. There used to be this very talented lead guitarist in Pancham's team who just could not fit into the team. Also, there lived a very gifted composer, but he got to score music in only about just over a dozen films in his entire career spanning 30 years. The reason? He always tried to prove too hard that he was the best and often ended up demeaning industry peers. However talented one is, one-upmanship doesn't work. Team compassion works. But is adaptability only about adjusting to the team or culture? Or is it a polite way of saying, follow the crowd? No. there is a bigger play about adaptability. Adaptability is also about how to stay relevant through changing market dynamics. Let's take another example of this actor, Rajesh Khanna. You might have heard of him. Your parents would definitely have heard of him. He was Bollywood's first superstar, the quintessential romantic hero. He had a dozen massive hits between 1969 and 1972. His distinctive styles like the crinkling of the eyes and a very specific shake of the head, that helped create a frenzied fan following for him. He dictated the box office for those 3 years. But Rajesh Khanna's massive success run happened within those 3 years. Yes, it was too much, but too soon. So the very mannerisms and style that had won him such a huge fan following became all too familiar and started looking repetitive. People started looking for something different. They wanted a change. Now, did Rajesh Khanna sense this shift in the market dynamics? Did he sense this shift in the market preference? Maybe he did. But what did he do about it? He kept doing more of the same mannerisms, the same things, till a point where he became a caricature of himself. Now, what could Rajesh Khanna have done differently when his market equity started eroding? He could have asked himself, what is my core brand value? Is it that of a romantic singing hero? No. That was just what the script demanded of him to play film after film. His core brand property was that of an actor. He was a theater actor. Could he have leveraged his broader core of being an actor instead of that very narrow, unidimensional romantic hero? Could he have done what his industry peer Sanjeev Kumar did? Sanjeev Kumar played a young hero in Sita Aur Geeta. He played a middle-aged man in Sholay, a mix of both in Mausam, and then 9 roles in one single film called Naya Din Nayi Raat, all within a span of 4 years. What did he do? Sanjeev Kumar had unpacked his core of being an actor rather than just being a hero, and therefore he always stayed relevant. Let's look at how it applies even in our industries. When COVID happened, new age banks like fintech were able to cushion themselves by using the work from home model. Why? Because the core brand property was technology and not brick and mortar, not people driven. It was an app driven business. So maybe in your case, you could ask yourself, apart from being an MBA, what else is there at my core? For example, am I more of a data and analytics person, or do abstractness and creativity excite me? Am I best when working alone, or does team management and client interaction excite me? Does hitting number targets satisfy me, or does creating a process and documenting it make me happy? And once I identify this core brand property of mine, I seek to discover a vacant space that this brand property can create for me. That is, what skills related to this brand property that I've discovered within myself can I develop and sharpen? It may be in the industry that you're working in, or it may be a different industry altogether. Let me share an incident from my life. In my 9th standard, I did terribly in all the subjects as usual, but there was one subject I did well, and that was English. My English teacher specifically appreciated me for something that she felt I had within me. Anyway, life moved on. I did engineering, and then I got into the banking and financial services industry. And here I am, years later, speaking with you at Goa Institute of Management, a TEDx speaker, not because I was an engineer, not because I did anything great as an engineer, not because I've done anything great in my banking career, but because, thankfully, about 15 years back, I was reminded of what my 9th standard English teacher had told me when many decades back. She said, Balaji, you are good at storytelling and writing. These are your skills. And I had not realized it then. I realized it much later. Let's take another example. Amitabh Bachchan. Who hasn't heard of Amitabh Bachchan? I think we all have. In the first 20 years of his career, till 1991, he banked on his voice and his hero image. It gave him tremendous results, no doubt about it. But in the 1990s, the same old hero image stopped working. He looked older, and film after film of his flopped, till a point where he was virtually down and out of the industry. What did Amitabh Bachchan fall back on? How did he course correct? Okay, have you heard of these films in the 1970s called Bhuvan Shom, Shatranj Ke Khiladi, Bawarchi? Now, what's common to these films? It had something to do with Amitabh Bachchan, but not as an actor. He was the voice-over for these films. He gave his voice. So whether on screen or off screen as a voice-over, his voice was the dominant factor of his executive presence. Even in the 1990 film Agnipath, not the new one, the old one, in the Agnipath, where he deliberately spoke with a gruff voice, his voice became the talking point of the entire film. And thus, in the year 2000, it was, "Main Amitabh Bachchan bol raha hoon. Kaun banega crorepati" became his comeback vehicle. What was he doing? It was much more than just an entertaining television show. It was a case study. Case study how? The core brand property of his voice-led executive presence created that new opportunity for him in the TV show. No action sequences, just his voice and his personality, with him seated in a chair in a stationary position. And that did the work for him. Another learning here, another soft skill that Amitabh Bachchan demonstrated out here. Those days, for a movie star to start doing television shows was considered a demotion. But Amitabh Bachchan demonstrated emotional flexibility. He knew he had discovered, he had discovered that sweet spot which would give him that breakthrough. And he didn't worry about what people are going to perceive of him. He chose his own path. And therefore, here we are. Amitabh Bachchan stayed relevant for the next 23 years and counting. So what do we leave you with? What do we leave you as food of thought with? Leadership through innovation, blending into the organization culture, adaptability, and remaining emotionally flexible. These are a few of your favorite things needed for staying relevant for long voyages. Thank you.